Football is the world's most popular sport. This is a story about one country's desire to compete in the global game. But the game in question is not football, but football production. As recently as the mid-1990s, Pakistan made 7 out of every 10 footballs in the world. Now the game is changing. Because of competition from emerging markets such as China and Indonesia, its market share has fallen to 4 out of every 10 footballs. Pakistan's football sector needs to grow. Key to growth is innovation. The question is, how do you promote innovation? What this story finds goes far beyond the beautiful game. Sialkot, Pakistan. This place has a strong claim to be the home of football production. Here footballs are made mainly by hand, stitched together as they have been for decades. It is here that economists ask, how can we help this sector to grow? How can we help the sector innovate?
So in the soccer ball sector in Sialkot, the primary input in production is Rexin. It's an artificial leather which is then treated with latex glue and with cotton layers, and that's about 55% of costs. And so a key technological problem in the sector is how to reduce the waste of that Rexin. A standard soccer ball design has hexagons and pentagons, and there are cutters who use hexagon dies or pentagon dies, or sort of cookie cutters that they use to cut at hexagons and pentagons. Those guys were pretty good at placing the hexagon die in a way that minimizes waste of the Rexin.
Now hexagons, when you look at them and you try to cut hexagons out of a sheet that is measured, it sort of fits in and there's very little wastage. But with the pentagon sheet, there was a lot of wastage.
It was clear that part of the reason why Pakistan had lost market share was that its costs were too high. One way to change this might be to invest in large machines, but given the high costs of bringing machines to Pakistan and the low labour costs, high-tech machines are often not profitable. The IGC economists then came up with an innovation that could reduce the waste in producing footballs.
When we actually started to research, we found out that by having a better pattern of cutting, we could get the workers and at least the firms a lot of saving.
The new technology that we discovered is basically a new way of cutting out pentagons. It's not entirely new. This is something that mathematicians have known about for many years, and something that we discovered by seeing a YouTube video of a Chinese factory that was also cutting pentagons. Industrial espionage by YouTube.
We were now getting a die that was, instead of getting the traditional 260, 262 from a sheet, we were getting 10 to 12 more pentagons per sheet. Now, if you spread that over production, it could be major cost savings for a firm. Between 20 to 25 dies had to be made. It meant soliciting with a lot of die makers. Later on, it became interesting that everyone started to call the die by my name because I was the one who was getting it done and everything. So it was known as the Shamaila die.
The IGC researchers now had the technology, but to answer their question about how to promote innovation, they had to see whether this innovation worked and how it would spread. The way they did this is the same way that doctors would test a new medicine.
So we wanted to see how this new technology would spread from firm to firm. We actually naively thought it would be adopted very quickly by the firms that we gave it to. Of the 135 or so firms in Sialkot, we randomly divided them into 3 groups. One group we called the Tech Drop Group. That's the group we gave the new design and the new dies to. The second group is called the Cash Drop Group. We just gave them, it was $300 or 200 pounds is basically the value of the die that we'd given to the first group, and we did nothing else. And then the third group, we just call it the No Drop Group, we did nothing. We just did a survey. We didn't give them any cash or any technology. And then we stepped back. So we gave out the technology in May 2012. Still by August 2013, we'd had just a few firms adopt. In particular, one of the largest firms in town that has more than 2,000 employees that had adopted our technology for almost all of their production. On the other hand, it was puzzling that there were so few firms that had adopted our technology, even after a year.
The innovation worked, in that it reduced costs. From the outside, it seemed a no-brainer, but the economists needed to dig deeper to understand why firms were not adopting it.
We did a survey. We asked firms what they thought the barrier was, why hadn't they adopted, and the #1 answer was resistance from employees.
They were being paid per piece of the pentagons that they were giving, and it didn't matter what wastage they did on the sheet. They weren't being penalized for that. The worker was just afraid to adopt this technology because he thought he would get paid less.
They actually had no incentive to reduce waste of the Rexin. They just wanted to go fast. And our new die was slowing them down. Certainly initially when they're learning how to use it. So this new adoption was actually reducing the wage of the cutters, even at the same time that was saving a lot of the erection costs for the firm. The owners hadn't adjusted the labor contract, and so the employees were expecting that their wage would go down if they adopted the new technology. We did a second experiment in order to investigate this. Basically, we took half of the firms in our original tech drop group that we'd given the technology to, and we gave them a new intervention. We'd say to their cutters, we will come back in a month, we'll pay you a lump sum of a month's salary if you can demonstrate competence in using our technology, if you can get a certain number of pentagons in a certain amount of time. Essentially what we're doing by offering a month's salary as a lump sum is we're paying the training costs for those cutters.
15 firms were offered help with training costs and 10 accepted. Of those, 2 had already adopted. Of the 8 remaining treated firms, half have now adopted the new innovation and costs of production have fallen.
The workers were successfully demonstrated that they could use the new technology, and the owners saw that the workers were effective in using the new technology, and they were able to get more pentagons per sheet. Pentagons are about a third of total erection costs, and erection is about a half of total costs, so this ends up being about a 1% reduction in total costs, which sounds small. On the other hand, this is an industry with low margins, with margins about 10%, so a 1% reduction in cost is actually significant.
We have implemented such kind of die which can save a lot of cost. So the die which we are using before, we used to cut 6.5 balls per sheet. But now what die we are using nowadays, we can exceed more than 7 balls.
For a single firm, the benefits of this innovation are an increase in profitability, which could mean more jobs and opportunities for investment. But the lessons go far beyond one firm and one industry.
So there are incredible spillover effects of just one particular innovation in one sector. People's salaries improve, education levels can go up, quality of living can go up. And I'm not sure it could be replicated in other places or times the actual intervention we did, but the results show that technology is important. Firms are excited. Workers are also excited if you can just create, the sort of situation where they feel they don't lose out.
What really took place was that the innovation existed. It was a simple cutting pattern, and it's on Google. You can search it, you'll get it there. Even with the fact that it was there, manufacturers across were not understanding the actual use of it because there were other hurdles that were not letting them even look at it or thinking of it as a decent idea.
We're confident we're learning something about what the barrier was in the first place to technology adoption. So we're confident saying that employee resistance was one of the barriers preventing adoption earlier on. In other words, the incentives for the owners may be different from the incentives for the workers, and workers have to have an expectation that they're going to share in the gains of adoption in order to cooperate in the adoption process and in order for adoption to be successful.
In the rest of the world, we say, technology is bad, and if technology is bad, workers lose jobs. This was a technology where the firms would gain, the workers would gain, the sector would gain, and I thought that was really an important point to emphasize to policymakers. And to their credit, they understood it right away, and they said, this is a no-brainer. We should be promoting technology and innovation, not just in Sialkot, but everywhere in Punjab and eventually in Pakistan.
If there is an innovation that could benefit an industry such as football production that isn't being used, this could mean many missed opportunities. Inspired by this story, the government of Punjab province in Pakistan has put in place an innovation development fund to promote innovation.
Let's assume that there will be someone somewhere in the world giving us innovative ideas. If we get that innovative idea, then how are we going to make sure that we can spread it into the economy? That is where the challenge is.